Hello, folks. Welcome to this edition of Al's Joint. I'll be joined today by my co-host Dennis Painter as we jump right into this crazy week in Washington, D.C. Sometimes you just can't believe some of the stuff that this administration is doing. So as we pay homage to Donny Hathaway and this Christmas, let's take the gloves off and let's get at it. Well, Brother Painter, how are you today?
I'm doing pretty good. Still above ground and breathing, and that's always a good day for me.
Well, not unless you're part of the Trump administration, then it'll never be a good day or a good week for that dysfunctional administration. A couple things going on. It's been a whirlwind this week. This is getting borderline crazy. Every week, this government cannot function normally, and it's hurting the American people. So we have the continued bombing of rowboats, motorboats in Venezuela. We had the government take over one of their oil tankers, and now they're saying that they're putting a no travel ban in and around Venezuela. Looks like they're trying to force the president of Venezuela into a war.
Well, they've been trying to do that because they moved in the warships and military personnel in August before they started bombing. So this was intentional to try to antagonize Venezuela and get them to react, and so we could invade. And that's where we're headed. We're going to have a war down there. It's not going to be America's war. It's going to be Trump's war. But the unfortunate thing is America's sons and daughters will die because of Trump's narcissist mental problems.
If you look here, you see those pictures I have from Puerto Rico, where they have warships and fighter planes and fighter jets in Puerto Rico. And it's crazy how Puerto Ricans aren't allowed to vote, and there's other restrictions on them, but they're allowed to be, in essence, a military base for us when needed. So this is real. We're headed into a war from the president who wants a Nobel Peace Prize. How ironic is that?
He called himself, the peacemaker as well. How he could solve problems. But let's look at what happened. We started the military buildup in August, and you take a look at what's going on worldwide. That's exactly what Putin did before he invaded Ukraine. He had the military buildup in the areas that he felt like he needed it, weeks and months before he invaded it, and then he went in. And then now he's in a protracted war. Tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people have died because of that decision. And it was Putin's decision. We're going to be in the same situation with Venezuela. Unfortunately, tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of people will die on both sides. And that's unnecessary. And we've already had people die that was unnecessary. There's been no proof presented that any of the fishing boats that were bombed were carrying drugs. No proof that any of those were tied to drug cartel. And our system says if someone breaks the law, you arrest them, you give them their day in court, a jury gets to decide. But what we have now is an administration that says, if I think you're guilty, I'm going to kill you. And I shouldn't be questioned. And that's against the law. It's against everything we believe in. But that's Trump's law. If I believe you're guilty, you're guilty. And I'm going to do what I can to either eliminate you or to silence you.
And I tell folks that it's important for Americans to know that the reason why these rules of war benefit us is because whether we like it or not, there are more countries that hate the United States than any other country in the world. For whatever reason, we can have that discussion another day. So we don't want the rules of war to be violated because it's our soldiers, our service people that'll be targeted. So those rules of war, we follow them so we can tell other folks, do on to others as we do on to you. So now what message is that sending to the world? I'm not talking the world where people follow rules. I'm talking about those friends groups that say, you killed my family member for no reason because he was being forced to take a boat, or maybe he wasn't even forced. Maybe he was on a fishing boat and you killed him. And I see one of your soldiers here and I want revenge. That's how terrorists are created. We're creating terrorists. You can't just kill hundreds of people, innocent people in a country, and be the judge, jury, and executioner at pushing a button. It doesn't work that way. That comes back to haunt you.
Well, what we're inviting is retaliation inside of our country because we're attacking their country. Now, if we believe by any means that they have military forces that aren't going to look outside the borders and inside the U.S. borders and say, we're going to extract the price for what they've done, we're fooling ourselves. They're going to do that. And in terms of protecting prisoners of war, which there's a code for that, Trump really doesn't care. He called prisoners of war suckers. They got caught. And the way he talked about McCain, who was a prisoner of war, which he was a Republican, but he was a decent person that served his country. And yeah, he was a prisoner of war, and Trump called him a sucker. Trump has no empathy for the military. They're just another tool for him to get what he wants for him.
Yes, that's so true. It's unfortunately that we're going to lose some of our young men who aren't billionaires because this man thinks he's a dictator. If you had a legitimate case for having a conflict in Venezuela, you would have brought it to the American people like every other president, Democrat or Republican, have done when they decided to start a conflict. The way he's skirting around the laws is that, why have a Congress? If Congress is going to give up their duties, why do we need that many elected representatives?
Well, that's the thinking of a dictator. Well, I have any freedom. I want to have all the say, and I'll bypass Congress, which is what he's doing, and I'll declare war. I'll declare who should be killed and who shouldn't be killed, and I'll release, the drug cartel kingpins. But at the same time, telling Americans, "Oh, I'm hard on drug dealers and on the drug cartel. He's full of crap." I feel for the military personnel. I feel like they're caught in between serving their country and a maniac giving unlawful orders. And if you notice that the bombings, they wanted to publicize them so much, and then at least on the September 2nd bombing, when they went back and killed the other two sailors, now they refused to release the video. Going back and killing people like that is absolute murder. And we talked about it. It's murder for whoever gave the order down to whoever carried it out. And the people that are dropping those bombs and the family of the people that have dropped those bombs need to understand that they or their sibling or their child could be held accountable and put in prison because it's a war crime. It's murder. I'll keep saying that there has been no proof that there's been any drugs or they're tied to any cartel. And it makes more sense that we capture people, we interrogate them, we gather more information, we find out what ports allegedly they were going to carry them to. They certainly wouldn't carry them to the United States of America because we're 2,200 miles away. What ports were you going to carry them to? Then who was going to transport them if that was the case? That's what we should be doing. That's the smart thing to do. And Trump's not doing it. He's not thinking it through. He's not smart. He's not militarily smart. And quite frankly, and I don't say this lightly, none of his kids, none of his grandkids, none of his family is going to be involved in that war. And it'll be our children and our grandchildren that's
And
going to
I
be
would
killed.
like to know, why do they show these bombings like they're video games? But when you ask to show the one part of the bombing, you can't do it because it's classified. Aren't the other bombing classified? The ones that
Well,
were
they got
successful?
caught. They got caught doing something illegal. Oh, shit. Now, what do we do? Oh, well, we won't release it. It's classified. They were doing something illegal. They got caught doing something illegal. You have the ex-military attorneys who were either eliminated by Trump or got out because they didn't like the direction that the military was going. They've all formed together as a group, and they've said these acts are illegal. These are criminal acts that's being carried out. And this is what used to be the military attorneys saying this stuff, that used to give advice to the generals. And what they have in place now is people that are afraid to get fired. They got rid of all the old timers, the old school generals who would not violate the contract. So you got this new group saying, oh, my career will end along with my pension if I don't carry out these orders by Trump. So they're all under threat. I want them to understand that Trump has planned the war and that not to let that get in the way of the 2026 elections, not let that divert your attention about what needs to be done in those elections, because that's part of his strategy, is to divert America's attention away from what's important for Americans. And that election, the midterms, is important for the freedom of our country, to our people.
I'm glad you brought that up, because I believe that he's going to try to declare martial law during the election because we're in war. And that's why he needs to find the war to start so he can try to have some mechanism to control the midterms. So you're absolutely right. But I think folks should be aware of that and should be on the lookout for that. This makes no sense. Venezuela and this scheme of everything that's going on in the world is minuscule. And but he picked a target, and he's going to use that target because it doesn't matter. Everything he's done goes out the window when he loses the midterms. So we lost a great director. I think one of a great icon, Rob Reiner, and his wife was tragically murdered. I remember him as Meathead, and for the folks in our generation, and Archie Bunker's son-in-law and all of the family. He was murdered, but the case itself will work its way out through the legal system. They've arrested, unfortunately, their son, but your president.
My president. I didn't vote for him, I'll tell you that.
Your president decided that he would, instead of showing some empathy, some remorse, just these people had children, other than the one who charged with committing a crime. They have family. They have fans. This country needed somebody to say, we lost a good person. We hope that things work out. No, he died. He was killed because he was anti-Trump's policy, which proves to be far from the truth, like everything else he said. But the man has no empathy. He's a narcissist. No matter what the situation, it all comes back to him. He said specifically he had TDS, Trump deranged syndrome, and he didn't like Trump. And this man speaks of himself as a third person. I never understood that he refers to himself. He never says me or I. It's always Trump. So I just don't understand how people think that's okay. But some Republicans did speak out against that, even on Fox News. We had Laura Ingraham responding to that. I guess anybody's has at least one or two good streams running through their bodies. But other Republicans rushed to defend him, mocking and taking this tragedy and turning it into politics.
Well, if you want to see the contrast between a person with some moral code and a moral compass, Look at what Rob Reiner said when Charlie Kirk got killed. He said it's a terrible tragedy and he felt for the family. And that killing people was no solution to what's going on in America, or no solution to, the politics of this country. Every person that's died that Trump could turn it into a political thing, he does. I listened to it, and I read about it, and he went further and said that Reiner, and I'm quoting, he had the crippling disease known as the Trump derangement syndrome, and that Reiner, quote, was known to have driven people crazy by his raging obsession of President Donald J. Trump. What's he saying to everybody else? He's saying that it's not the son's fault. It's Rob Reiner's fault because he criticized Trump. What's he saying to the community? What is he saying to his base? If people criticize Trump, it's okay to go crazy and to kill people. That's, to me, is what the message he's putting out there. And he went on further later that same day and doubled down, telling reporters that Reiner died because he became and I'm quoting, became a deranged person with Trump derangement syndrome. Okay. So he's come up with a name for it and an excuse that it's okay to kill. Aside from that, he's a miserable excuse for a human being. He's putting words out there that will infuriate his base to kill more people because of criticism of Trump. And those people, along with Trump, do not understand democracy. Every president, every elected official, whether it be local, state, or national, or put in a position of leadership, are going to get criticized. It's just part of the picture. It always has been. Except for Trump, he can't take it. And when you talk about he's talking like in third person, it's because he's got 4 or 5 people inside his head, okay, and none of them are real. All right.
He got some little Trumps inside his head fighting each other.
Yeah, none of them are real. Which one's coming out today? Okay, you know.
But
You got
the
real
funny thing
Trump.
is that he suffered from OJS for the last 20 years. That's Obama jealousy syndrome. and for some reason Obama is like on a pedestal and he has to every day fight. He attacked Biden. It's been a year now since he's been elected. They're still talking about Joe Biden and blaming Joe Biden. And I want to make sure folks understand this. I haven't bargained hundreds of contracts as you have. The economy that Biden inherited was terrible, that he inherited from Trump. Now, you can blame COVID, you can blame whatever. But what Trump inherited from Obama was a Bentley. What he gave Biden was a Volkswagen. And Biden took it like we always do, like the Democrats always have to do. They have to save the working class people from the previous Republicans' administration. And he took that and he had it leveled and he had it back in great shape. Now, folks didn't see all the things that would have came had it continued, but Biden left him with a car that was back up running smoothly and ready to go to the next level. And what did he do? He took it and he made it worse. He took it right back to a Volkswagen, might even be a Fiat now. My point is that he's continually convinced the public that they were doing worse under Biden, and every indicator shows that he's lying, and he keeps spouting lies, but that 30% of the folks they still believe it. They're in the soup line, they're in the food pantries, they're in the unemployment line still saying, well, I know I was working a year ago, but Trump says I'm doing better, so I must be doing better.
Yeah. Well, Trump, whatever car he inherited, he's like a junk dealer. He strips it down to where it's not worth anything. And that's where our economy is going. All right. He's getting it stripped down to where everybody's going to suffer and the car won't run. All right. He's selling the parts off to the highest bidder. which happens to be people like the drug cartel president from Honduras, or the people that gave him the gold bars in the airplane, and he's just selling our democracy out. That's what he's doing. So when he was in the first time, and we've said this before, he sells himself as being such a great businessman. He created the third largest deficit in the history of the United States of America. Now understand that, not in the last 3 or 4 presidencies, in the history of America, he created the third largest, behind Abraham Lincoln and George Bush. And both of those were to fund wars. We were put into a deficit because of wars. He created one, he being Trump, created a greater deficit with no war through his quote unquote great business policies. And all he did was he ripped America off. And what he handed Joe Biden it was just parts of a car that Joe Biden had to put together. Now, the other piece of this, as I see it, not everyone may not see it, but I look at President Obama, President Biden, and Kamala Harris as all being a lot smarter than Trump will ever be, a lot better in terms of leadership than Trump will ever be, no matter how long he lives. And that's what's under Trump's skin. He knows that he's not up to par, but he has to hide it. He has to say, I'm great, when he knows he's not. He's got this underlying, insecurity. And remember, his parents sent him off to military school. To me, as a kid, what message would that tell me? My parents don't want me either. Okay. Okay. Seriously. I mean, they can say, oh, we sent you off to get the best education you can get. Well, first off, apparently he didn't get much of an education because he's dumb as hell. Okay. But it also is like, why did my parents send me away? They didn't want me either. I think he's had some serious psychological problems.
I think that one of the things he ran on is being a smart businessman. But if you go back now, he still won't release his tax returns because it'll show that he suckered the MAGA base into believing that he was some type of a real businessman, because he knew he was ready to be handed the keys to a Bentley. All he had to do was just take your time and drive around. But what did he do? Like you said, he stripped that Bentley down. The first thing that came, the first major catastrophe that most presidents will deal with 4 or 5 during their administration, COVID. He just totally blew it because he, like you said, he's not intelligent enough not to do anything stupid. And it ended up causing millions of people to die. He has to live with that. People can come up with all these, oh, well, it was a hoax and all that other BS. No, the people that I know that passed away from COVID, it's not a hoax. It was real, and it's going to continue. So, sometimes I get frustrated, but then I think about it. I'm like, these folks they know the truth, but they're clinging to what they want Trump to represent. And as long as he continues to represent that to them, they're okay with it. No matter how many lies, no matter how many sexual assaults, no matter how much evidence comes out that he's a pedophile, it's okay with them because he's doing what they need him to do.
I think this is where America should have the dividing line. And it doesn't matter which party you belong to. And that dividing line is, it's okay to be a conservative and be a Republican, but not be the type of person that breaks the law. Okay? Not be the type of person that will lie to you just to get in office. And it's up to voters to hold them accountable. And so clinging on to Trumpism because that's all you have right now is the wrong thing to do. You should be clinging on to your beliefs, and those beliefs should be the best beliefs for the good and welfare of all America. We may differ on those beliefs, but supporting a pedophile, that should be a universal belief. Raping children, raping women, sexually assaulting women should not be a universal acceptable thing. And in terms of, the churches and those who allegedly get up and speak every week about doing the righteous thing, do the righteous thing and say, he's wrong. I still have my conservative beliefs, but he's wrong and he needs to be removed from office. And I don't care if it's a Democrat, independent, Republican, we have to separate out our feelings or our loyalty to a party for loyalty to the Constitution, loyalty to the truth, loyalty to freedom. We approach it from different directions. Now, you know, and I know, we were in unions when we worked together, the Democratic Union. And democracy can be difficult and cumbersome sometimes. Okay, now you and I negotiated contracts. Would it be easier for us to go behind the members' backs and cut a deal with the employer? Just two of you cut a deal and say, okay, this is it? Yes, but that's not democracy. Democracy can be cumbersome. Democracy can be frustrating, but it is the best system that will end up in the end representing the needs of all people. And so that we need to work through those frustrations together. Republican, Independent, Democrat, we need to work through those together.
Agree. So we had this blockbuster story that came out from Vanity Fair. And it was written by Chris Whipple, who obviously has been interviewing the chief of staffs of presidents over the last couple of decades. So he's well known. The chief of staff and their staff know about him. And Trump's chief of staff, Susie Wiles, over the last few months gave multiple interviews that were all recorded. And then he came up and he wrote the article. And if this article is a must read for folks, they need to look up Vanity Fair and read the Susan Wiles article authored by Chris Whipple. It shows you how dysfunctional and ridiculously overwhelmed and how this staff, his current staff, is filled with DEI hires. If you read that article, you'll go from laughing to crying to concern, where she says that the Venezuela strikes, he wants regime change. She says that in the article, his chief of staff. She says that he has a alcoholic personality. I don't know what the hell that means. I only think every alcoholic I know didn't have a personality.
Alcoholic narcissist personality is right. She's a narcissist. Yeah. So narcissists are dangerous people.
Yeah, I understand. I implore folks, please read that article. This kind of just shows you're talking about his chief of staff who's being truthful. Most of the stuff that she says, we already know. She just validates it. There's nothing in here that's going to be jaw-dropping. You're going to say, we already knew that. But when you have somebody validated from within the administration in that position, that kind of tells you something. And there's been no pushback. What they try to do is say that Chris Whipple took things out of context. He lied by omission. And unfortunately for them, it's all on tape. So if you keep calling him a liar, he's going to be forced to release the tapes. So you'll probably see them run some type of hokey doke again and started pointing to the fact that, she didn't mean A or she didn't mean B, or trying to own some of the stuff and make it seem like it's not as bad as she reported it to be. One important thing she also mentioned was Elon Musk's role and how he was out of control and how he slept in one of the rooms at the White House in a sleeping bag because he's a weirdo. Nothing wrong with being a weirdo. What is wrong is that some of the agencies that he decided to gut, they said Trump didn't even know half the stuff he was doing. Not that he would have stopped him, but Trump doesn't know half the stuff that's going on anyway because he's incompetent. So they said that when he ended U.S. aid, that Trump knew nothing about it. There was infighting within the administration because folks understood, Republicans and Democrats understood what U.S. aid does for the rest of the world and the countries that we need to be friends with, that we need to have to be able to make sure our place in this world at the top country is maintained. Since he's ended that, there's 600,000 women and children have died from starvation. And they said that there's been 69 measles outbreaks this year around the world. So people understand borders don't stop measles. If I'm a citizen of another country and I'm flying to the United States and my child has the measles or I contracted the measles and I don't know about it, there's nothing stopping me from coming to the United States and spreading them throughout the United States. We cut off this funding to these other countries to be able to deal with those issues. It comes back. The chicken comes home to roost. This is the world's open now. I mean, you can close the borders to undocumented workers. You don't close the borders from folks coming in for business, folks coming in as tourists. They come in and out of our country. And when you're talking about 69 measles outbreaks in the world, we had measles under control. If it pops up, somewhere once in a while was dealt with, but it was rare. Now everything that we fought over the decades and hell, the almost centuries now to deal with and to combat is coming back because this administration's malfeasance.
Well, I agree with you on the terms of all of that and Elon Musk's role in that. The American people, I think, need to realize that immigrants are going to be blamed because they're in this country, but businessmen travel to those countries to do business. Okay,
Good point.
bring it back. So let's cut the chase, cut all the crap out. You know, people travel. To your point, viruses and diseases have no borders. Okay. And the way the world is today, the way the world does business today is that we have in America businesses all over the world, and they send representatives to those businesses when necessary. And an example, a terrible example, but it's a prime example, was COVID. You know, COVID came to this country, brought in by someone else. So ending aid, and I mean, it goes further than that, ending research for diseases that we're trying to combat. Ending those type of programs does not help our country, it does not help the world. Now, we used to be world leader in helping feed people, making sure they had water, you know, teaching children in undeveloped countries, trying to help them, at least putting on the face that we were a decent country. Now, you said earlier in this podcast, you know, other countries don't like the United States of America. I understand why. I mean, they absolutely hate America because of the policies that Trump's putting out. And I don't say that lightly because this is my country. I love my country. I hate what Trump is doing, but I understand why other countries now despise us when they used to look up to us. Because we're doing more than destroying our own country. We're destroying people's lives in other countries.
Agreed. Well, as always, we're not going to leave this podcast without giving folks an update on the Epstein pedophile scandal. The case is under the control of I call it the TPP, the Trump Pedophile Protectors. And that starts at the very top with Donald Trump. That includes the first lady, his wife. That includes J.D. Vance and everybody in his administration is part of the TPP.
It's J.D. Dance.
J.D. Dance, yes.
No, I agree with you. The thing that came out last week that I saw on the documents that's been released, not the photos, I'm talking about the documents. One of the congressmen held up a book, had 500 pages, and he just flipped through them. Every page had been redacted. There was no literature, no language, nothing written whatsoever. It was every single page had been redacted. And we're going to be running into that. We need to be demanding the unredacted files. Now, part of that is coming out through the three federal judges saying release, the information that was put in the grand jury hearings for Grizzly Maxwell. So we'll see if we get that. But I learned something this week I didn't know, Al. Grizzly Maxwell actually is a citizen of three countries: United Kingdom, France, and the United States. Now, we do not have extradition agreement with France to have her extradited to France. But I'm wondering why those countries cannot file charges as well in this case and represent those women as well in this case, not substitute our country and our obligation, but increase the pressure on our own congressmen and senators to do the right thing, because they too can prosecute Grizzly Maxwell. Now, in one of her plea deals, she tried to give up her citizenship to UK and France so she would get bond. Because that was one of the arguments was that, well, she's a citizen in those two countries and she will flee to those countries, and we don't have extradition agreement with France. So she tried to get bond by giving up her citizenship to those two countries. So there's another avenue of pressure. I'm not saying it should be our avenue and that we focus on it, but it seemed like to me that someone should be, utilizing that, because even if she gets out, okay, she could be rearrested for crimes by people in those countries. I understand UK because Prince Andrew's involved. They've been silent. I understand that. I don't understand why France has been silent.
Yeah, I doubt if she go back to France, but there's another couple of dozen countries that she could go to and live happily ever after without any extradition process with the United States or agreement with the United States. But she's in this country club of a facility. They said that she gets to have her dog there. She has picnics. She has special meals. She's free to roam the complex. She has unlimited access to the internet and to phones. This is from a pedophile. And that's why I think the TPP, the Trump Pedophile Protectors Club, is protecting her and everybody else. And you're right, they're going to be redacting a lot of information because they know that Trump name appears a couple hundred times in the files. There's pictures of him in the files, and there's going to be pictures of him with underage girls. If they get them released and not redacted, that folks are going to see. But we all know that President Trump is a pedophile. We already know he's a rapist and his sexual misconduct, but he's also a pedophile, and he ruined the lives of girls. And he has to pay for that. And anybody that's protecting him, they should pay for it too. Whether you're a Democrat, whether you're independent, whether you're from the Green Party, the Republican Party, you need to pay if you're guilty of being a pedophile. There is a system in place, and those folks need to be placed in a system for justice for those girls.
Every person who has any morals about them, any respect for law and order, should be speaking up and demanding justice for those women. We need to send a strong message that using underage girls and boys for sex trafficking is not going to be tolerated. Now, what, within the last week been reading is that is a huge business in the United States of America. It's a huge business. We're trafficking young girls from all over the world into this country for sex. Citizens being silent on it, they're supporting it. That line needs to be drawn between your moral code and being a Trump supporter. It doesn't mean give up your party affiliation. But in those organizations that say, protect the children, send us your money, they need to step up and say, hey, we're going to play a role in this too. Okay. Now there's organizations out there that help protect these women or underage girls that have been used for sex trafficking and try to help them get back to as much of a normal life as they can. They need to be speaking up as well. I mean, we need to join together, all of us, and demand that every word of those files be made public except for the names of the girls and boys. Okay? We all need to join hands together. The Democrats, the independents, the Republicans, Save the Children, the churches, we all need to join together, hold hands and say, this is going to stop.
Agree. Unless they want to belong to the TPP, the Trump Pedophile Protectors. Maybe they should get red hats to say TPP on it to let folks know who you are. The one thing that we bring up Bill Clinton's name because his name's been brought up on one of the airplanes. And one thing I can say about Bill Clinton, or if people want to investigate Bill Clinton, is that as a sitting president and former president, you get a Secret Service detail to you. You don't get a choice. You don't get to dismiss them, right? So I'm asking folks, anybody out there that can do it, get the Secret Service records. They show that he was on the plane, went to Epstein Island, put it out there. Subpoena that information. Get that information out there. If he's guilty, he got to go too.
Well, Kash Patel got on TV and said that since he's taken over, they've done more to stop sex trafficking than anyone else before him. So we should be demanding that from him, even though his girlfriend is getting protection, security protection paid by the United States taxes for his girlfriend. I don't know how many girlfriends he's got, but I know one of them we're paying for protection for her just because she's his girlfriend. If he's doing so much, okay, he needs to step up his game a little bit.
I want to touch to another subject that's been hitting me in a way that's these commercials I'm seeing, the Shriners Hospital, St. Jude's. I've probably seen those commercials that do cancer research, and they're begging for contributions. Those hospitals should never have to ask for a penny from the public. If you can spend $300 million on a ballroom, if you can spend what they're talking about spending nearly $500 million on this Trump the Ark or whatever the hell they're talking about, if you can fly the FBI director's girlfriend around with Secret Service men, and these hospitals that are trying to keep kids from dying have to go and beg for money, what does that say about this country? What did that say about your narcissist pedophile president? You can't make this shit up. We're supposed to be the United States of America.
Well, I mean, it goes back to the scientific programs that been cut that will save lives and protect, current and future children, okay, and adults. I mean, there's big issues out there. There's diabetes and there's cancers. There's big issues out there that was being worked on that funds have been cut.
Well, look, we probably could talk for another 2 hours and not run out of material from this administration. But once again, I want to thank you for taking part in this podcast. And I look forward to talking to you next week, and we can see what other crazy shit comes out of Washington, D.C. So, folks, as we come to the end of another episode, be sure to hit the share, like, and subscribe buttons. We're trying to stay in this fight, and we need your help to do it. Also, leave your comments below. We're really interested in what you're thinking on the day's subject, unless you're a far right-wing MAGA nut, and we don't give a damn what you're thinking. But as this holiday season comes, please don't forget the folks less fortunate than you. Don't forget those mothers and fathers and children who were ripped apart from their family by ICE. Those families will never know where their loved ones are this holiday season. So until next week, let's keep this country out of the hands of those far right-wing nuts. Peace.
This segment of Al's Joint is brought to you by J-Pack Trucking.